I was working with a client and I was trying to encourage them to create a little bit of movement in their sits bones. So trying to have some SI joint movement. It was to help with their low back. And in me trying to demonstrate that movement, something caught in my back. My back wasn't used to doing that particular focus, and I had a little bit of a spasm in my low back. I'm used to pain as far and sort of what those mechanisms are, and it didn't scare me, but I thought it was kind of interesting. And I sat with that, no pun intended, for a while and maybe tried a couple stretches here and there. But I like when I get, as a clinician, when I become injured and I'm not afraid of the injury, I like to sit with it and see and sort of use it as a test opportunity. So I'd been sitting with this pain, hadn't been thinking about it too much. And the client comes in with the chair and says, "You really got to use this chair." And we went through our session and she left the chair for a long-term loan. And I sat in the chair and just did a little bit of wobbling back and forth in it. And immediately I felt something shift in my low back, the deep 6 rotators in the hips across the sacrum. I went, this is interesting, because I mean, there's a moment when you first sit in these chairs where you're like off balance. It's like almost getting your sea legs, so to speak. And I also felt something release. And I stood up and the pain in my back was 95% better. Walking and moving around later that day, it was completely better. So I know the intention of the chair was long-term postural support, being able to have core support while you're sitting, but just having that little bit of extra motion actually gave the opportunity for muscles that were spasmed and sort of afraid to move to release in a healthy, dynamic way. So right out of the gate, this is something that I can start to recommend to my clients. A statement I always liked was your best posture is your next one, and that I feel like people were meant to move. The chair, while not being so off balance that you're overly distracted by it, the chair is moving in all these different directions. And what it also does is, because it's moving, you have to stabilize with different muscles than you're used to. So if I'm sitting on this chair, it's really hard for me not to have my feet planted, offloading my hip. In the case of my spasms in my low back, those muscles were tight. They were afraid to move. This is a good thing, because if I had had a traumatic injury, these muscles might be holding my vertebrae together and making sure that I don't become paralyzed. So I really appreciate that my back has this response. But the trick is, and in my work often, I'm looking for how do we release the muscles, or the nervous system's relationship to the muscles, so that we can comfortably move forward. And in this case, being able to have these minor recalibrations that my hips had to do in a fluid way that felt safe, because my feet were planted on the floor, is my guess as to how my nervous system went, oh, okay, we can let go of this tension here. Is it the neuromuscular input of having to do slight shifts that the brain is having to keep sharper and more aware of your posture, so you're then going to correct it? I don't always know the mechanisms, and in my work, I think that people who get too attached to one mechanism for any healthcare thing I become suspicious of. They become stuck on why something works instead of what works. I tend to like approaches when you're dealing with dynamic systems that have some degree of dynamic response to. So if every person is walking around with this dynamic things going on, the history in their tissues, and if you sit them in the same office chair as somebody else, and you say, oh, this is the best office chair, I'm saying everyone needs the same 90 degrees, slightly past 90 degrees to the angle, the exact angle of your eyes to the computer screen, and exact angle of your shoulders. These are all good benchmarks, but we're dynamic systems that shouldn't be boxed in by what the technological revolution created of mass production. Even with this, I still recommend people get up and walk.